My lesson plan for my 9th grade Algebra Concepts and Connections class was taught on April 22nd, 2024. This lesson plan is the first lesson of a 5-day unit on data and statistical reasoning. At the beginning of the lesson, students will take an 8-question Measures of Center and Variability pre-assessment Google Form quiz. And so you can see the Google Form assessment just assessed, did they remember the difference between the 3 measures of center, mean, median, mode, and the measure of variability. The Nearpod lesson was an interactive lesson that I had created that went with our current note-taking guide. So I took the note-taking guide that was already created and added slides that would go over the measures of central tendency with a reminder of mean, and then embedded a question. Then we talked about how to find mean by hand, just using a basic scientific calculator. Then we talked about median, and we did it in the fill in the blanks question for them to practice median on their own. And you can see they did kind of a fill in the blank drag and drop question. Then we reviewed how to find mode. And then I did a poll question. We went over that. Then we talked about range, how to find that measure of variability. They practiced with an open-ended question. Then I taught them how to use the table function in the TI-30SX. And so editing the list, and then we did a matching activity. And then we went to Desmos, and not just Desmos online, but the Desmos Georgia high school version calculator they'll actually be allowed to use during the end of course test, May 13th and 14th. And I taught them how to type in a data set and how to calculate the statistics and the mean, median, and how to use the max and min to find range. And then we practiced with more interactive questions. And I was able to have my teacher screen showing me how students were progressing through the lesson, what students were missing the questions, which one we needed to go back. And then we had a collaborate question that was more discussion about how removing the slowest time affected the mean or median, and they had to explain. And then we got to outlier at the very end of class. So that is my Nearpod lesson. So we went through the Nearpod lesson. I was able again to formatively assess throughout the lesson. And then, so that was more of a guided practice with immediate feedback. And then the Delta Math assignment is how we practiced, independent practice. Now this is a link to the PDF, but Delta Math is one of my favorite math programs. It was set up to give students they had to get 5 questions in each of the skills correct. And if they missed one, it would keep giving them questions until they got 5 correct. This is just a printed PDF to show you some of the example questions, and then actually giving them some of the one variable stats that they would see on the TI-30SX and knowing how to interpret those different data items. And then at the very end of the lesson, the last 5 minutes of class, I had them complete a Google Form exit ticket just to get some idea about how they felt about the lesson, what was one important thing they learned, did they feel prepared for today's lesson, and what did they enjoy most about today's lesson. And that is how I ended the lesson. My lesson plan implementation was a success. I am not new to using digital tools in my classroom. I teach an amazing group of students that embraces the many digital tools I incorporate into my class. Many of the students like using a variety of tools and not overusing any one tool too much. I rate my lesson as a success based on the feedback I received from the exit ticket. Many students reflected on how they knew the vocabulary terms from the past math classes but had forgotten exactly what they mean and how to calculate the different values. One student noted that he enjoyed the lesson, the part of the lesson the most was learning cheat codes on the graphing calculator. Another student commented that the Nearpod lesson was his most enjoyable part of the lesson. If another teacher were going to teach this lesson, I would recommend that they are comfortable using all of the digital tools prior to implementing the tools in the classroom. I love technology and gadgets. I think my enthusiasm for learning and implementing new tools in the classroom is contagious to my students. I want to show excitement and a willingness to learn and troubleshoot when implementing a new digital tool. I would never want my students to witness me getting frustrated with a digital tool because I was unsure of how to use it during the lesson. Therefore, I experiment with any digital tool before I implement it in my classroom. I watch a lot of YouTube videos and practice with a Chromebook logged in as a student before implementing a new program into my classroom. When I teach this lesson again next year, I will continue to use the digital tools I use this time. But I will continue to use these digital tools and other digital tools I've learned about during this course. My students enjoy using technology. I have higher levels of engagement and interaction when I use digital tools for interactive lessons, online practice, because they provide immediate feedback and allow students to collaborate.